Yo, it's your boy Logos. And today I want to react to Thomas Sowell and Denzel Washington talking about the problem within black culture. And I think that's the reason why we can't have the excellence that we always talk about and try to strive for. If we uphold people that always try to do detrimental or dangerous stuff to our communities instead of positive, smart, knowledgeable people, intellectuals, then you're only going to get what you got so far. You can't say you want better or something different, but do the same behaviors. And that's just the raw honesty. That applies to the community and that applies to individuals, including you, myself, anybody else. It's just the way it is. But I'm curious to see what Denzel Washington got to say. Because I'm pretty sure during his time filming Fences, maybe like 8, 10 years ago at this point, he was talking about black culture and the need to change it. And I think that's why we're being held back. Not because of racism or any other stuff they try to tell you on social media, CNN, or any other stuff like that. Let's get into it.
So why did he need a black director? Could a white director not have?
It's not
produced this
color,
work?
it's culture.
Explain the difference, because I think we're
Steven
in a space
Spielberg
right
did Schindler's List.
now. Mm-hmm.
Martin Scorsese did Goodfellas, right? Steven Spielberg could direct Goodfellas. Martin Scorsese probably could have done a good job with Schindler's List. But they're cultural differences. You know, I know, you know, we all know what it is when a hot comb hits your hair on a Sunday morning, what it smells like.
Huh?
That's a cultural difference, not just a color difference.
All right.
So it's the culture.
You know about a hot comb scenario?
No, she don't know about no
looking-
hot comb.
Because that's
You
that's
don't know.
old
You
school.
don't know nothing about.
Dax.
See how everybody laughed? That's a cultural difference. That's not a race difference. That's just that motion. That's all I gotta say, right?
I know what a hot comb is.
Okay.
All right. The space that we're in, culture versus race, and how important it is. You know, where we are right now as a culture, as an American family. You're producing a film that's culturally germane to a particular time and a particular people. You know, even the Martin Luther King, JFK, Jesus trilogy, you know, triumvirate that was on the wall. We didn't have that on our wall, but our next door neighbor did. And that's what you're talking about.
I put that in there.
Huh? You did that?
Yeah, I
because
put
that was on your,
Jesus
was that on your
everywhere.
wall? Huh?
Okay,
You put
and that
Jesus
wasn't in
everywhere?
our house.
Huh?
You know, and there was that velvet kind of paint. You know, they put that velour, whatever they call that velvet. Yeah.
Politics, economics, and war are all exciting, but culture is often quietly decisive. You cannot explain why France, which fought off the German invaders for 4 long years during the First World War, despite devastating casualties, collapsed and surrendered after just 6 weeks of fighting in the Second World War, on the basis of objective factors. Both the German and the French military leaders at the time thought at the outset that France had the better prospects of victory. Decades later, German and French military scholars reached the same conclusion. But the culture of France had changed between the world wars. Hitler followed such things and banked on the French no longer being the same when he overruled all the protests of his generals and ordered the invasion of France to begin in 1940, when some of those generals thought they were being sent on a suicidal mission. Race.
That's true, but also got to do with, German military tactics. The fact they use tanks and armored vehicles a lot better and a lot more. Plus, they did the sneak attack, sort of like sneak attack, but going through the Ardennes, the forest, and they thought, well, the French thought that was impossible for tanks to make it through, so that wasn't as, heavily defended. But it's partially dealing with the culture, and you also have to factor in French lost so many people during the First World War, like millions and millions just thrown into the meat grinder. They really didn't have the mindset or the culture to go through all that stuff again. So the fact they just collapsed and folded on themselves. Also, you have to factor in the military part, that the head general in charge of the French army was, for one, stuck in like old times. They didn't have the doctrine of using armored warfare. They didn't have the doctrine of using like the same way the Germans did, the blitzkrieg and such and so forth, stuff like that. But also at the same time, it was just there was there was a French general. I can't remember his name right now, but there was a French general that helped stop the French from folding during World War One. I can't remember his exact name right now. I haven't listened to Dan Carlin's series about it in a minute. But the whole point is they had people in power that were strong-willed, that refused to step back or let France fall. So at that point, they did everything they could to keep French in the war. So I do agree with Thomas Sowell saying like the culture and stuff was changed, but it was many factors. France was just war weary from going through the First World War. They didn't have the same good leadership, that the same military doctrine as before, as it was 20 years ago. Meanwhile, Germany was focused on tanks, mobility, surrounding forces. And honestly, at a certain point, France could have still like fought off the Germans, but they just couldn't hold together. They just wasn't strong mentally enough to do it.
Race may be visible on the surface, but culture goes deep. Americans are not a race, but the American culture is what has made Americans different from the various races of Europe, Asia, and Africa from which Americans are derived. People of the same race will slaughter each other when they come from different cultures. Generals of German ancestry, Pershing and Eisenhower, led the American armies against Germany in both world wars, and German cities were bombed into rubble by another American general of German ancestry, Karl Spaatz. War is not the only arena where culture is decisive. A culture pervaded by corruption will keep a country poor, even if it has an abundance of rich natural resources. Youngsters from a culture that puts a high value on education outperform youngsters from a culture that does not, even when they live at the same economic level in the same neighborhoods and sit side by side in the same schools. Cultures are inherited, just like race, and may be nearly as hard to change. Cultural head starts have enduring consequences. Because Western Europe was invaded by the Romans, it acquired written languages centuries before Eastern Europe did, and remained more advanced for centuries, as literate societies have been more advanced than illiterate societies around the world. Cultures do change, however, and, like other changes, these may be for better or for worse. Many of the cultural changes in contemporary America, and in Western civilization in general, have been for the worse. These changes are among the many ingredients of a gathering perfect storm.
I agree completely with them. I think at the end of the day, it's about the culture. There's no reason why we can't achieve the same thing we see other races achieve. It's really crazy how people can come over and immigrate from other countries and be successful in America, while, the black community, our population has stayed the same. Our economic growth really hasn't changed that much in terms of, the way our communities look, the amount of people still in poverty, and then the culture that we do have where we uphold rappers, gangster rap, violence, promiscuity. We really don't care about families. Single mothers are just made as something that's not. It's not like you want to make single mothers out to be the devil, but the whole point is you don't want to have that type of thing. Single motherhood just be something that be encouraged. If you get what I mean. Like if it happens, it happens, but you shouldn't be saying, well, you don't need a man. You can do fine just by yourself. Like I could be his mom and his dad. Like it's stuff like that that I really hate. And you see it often. Well, at least I saw it often. Ram says saw it and heard it often. Growing up and even still now today as we're older. It just makes no sense. But at the end of the day, I think it's the culture. I'm glad Denzel Washington mentioned it. And of course Thomas Sowell gonna talk about it. And I say it over and over again, if we change the culture, we can change our outcomes. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's your boy Logos, and I'll see you next time. Peace.